Hi, and welcome to Dipping and Out with Lucy, the podcast that opens up the discussion around domestic abuse. Today, actually, the episode isn't necessarily around domestic abuse. It is, however, around the similarities that there are in terms of mental health and the impact that can have on the future that you want for yourself. And I'm here today with Alec Gray. Alec is a social prescriber, which I will let him explain. I'm fortunate enough to know what one is, but I'm sure many people aren't aware of the cape that you wear to save the day. Over to you, Alec.
Good morning, Lucy. Thanks for having me on. Pleasure to chat with you. So yeah, what a social prescribing link worker is, it's been around for about 5 years, and every doctor's surgery in the country has something called a social prescriber. It's like part of the personalised care team, where if anyone's struggling with isolation, loneliness, things like that, what we do is that, a doctor might have 10 minutes with them, and then we have a lot longer than. It's like a personalised care, a holistic way of supporting people. That's not with medicine, it's everything but. So we like signpost them, and if they're nervous, going to support groups in the local communities, and basically we move people forward with their life, and just whatever they may be, whatever issues they may have in their life, we help them along with that, or signpost them. And we like a connection with all the services in the town and the local authority, and absolutely proud to do it. And I'm the first male social prescribing link worker in Hartlepool, and we'll always be proud of that.
Wow, that is amazing. That is incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so that's what I do for a living, and that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. And it came around as a result of a mental health, I would say, crisis I was in, and I had to do something about it. And if you allow me to tell you, we can go back to the beginning of how it all began, if that's all right with you, Lucy.
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah. So it all started when I was self-employed. I was a self-employed taxi driver at the time, and I'd done other things in my life, but I was happily, my wife was doing her career, and I was able to be with my children and pick them up and drop them off, and I was loving my life, being self-employed and being my own boss and that, until something like, I had a weird feeling about having a crash, like, before a holiday. Now, I genuinely believe, looking back, that must have been financial anxiety about, if you have a job where you get paid in holiday pay, that wouldn't have come into my mind. So it must have been, please don't have an accident before you go on, your holiday. I think it was about 2017, and thankfully I didn't have the crash before my holiday. But on the holiday with my family, I just didn't feel right, and I don't know why. There was just something at the back of my mind, and I just didn't know what it was, and I didn't feel my normal self. But so I had my holiday, and then I came back home. I got in my taxi on the Monday, and I thought to myself, well, what were you worried about? You were being silly, and I don't. And then the next minute, a couple of hours into my shift, all I heard was a screeching noise behind me, and I got crashed into. Now, it wasn't a major crash. I wasn't in danger of my life or anything, but it set me on a psychological downward spiral that it was really difficult. So I was very emotional, and the girl was like blasé, saying, well, it's only a taxi, sort of thing. But it was as if, like, the realization that the crash was going to happen, but it was just a case of when. So because I was thinking, worrying about it, and then it happened, then that was set me off on I called my wife, and I was emotional, and she thought I was really hurt, but I said, I'm fine. I just really feel like I knew this was coming, and it was so bizarre. So what followed over the next few weeks and months was really, really difficult. So I was struggling to cope with these emotions. And then, because I'd thought the crash was going to happen at some point, and it did, what then happened was what I since learned was like an inner chimp. And I'll tell you a book I read about helping myself, but this voice kept saying to me, so you thought you were going to have a crash, and you did. Let's concentrate on what else you're going to get correct. So the next thing was, something's going to happen to your family. Right. And then that moved its way down to, something's going to happen to your son. So the intrusive thoughts were taken over, and it was like I was trying to do my job and trying to live a life and trying to stay afloat. But I was going to pick my son up from school thinking, is today going to be the day when I get that right as well and he's not going to be with us anymore? So I was trying to live with that. So that was tough, really, really, really tough. So I thought, right, and I was speaking to my wife and I was drinking too much. I was playing music and getting emotional. And then I was thinking, say, like if I wasn't speaking to some certain people, like family members or friends, this chimp was coming at me strong and it was saying, you know, your job's rubbish, you're rubbish, it would be better off if you weren't here. That person's not speaking to you. So the understanding years ago when I used to think about mental health, I think if people had a family and they'd done something, if they took their own life, then there would be like that would like be a cowardly thing to do. But with the understanding of this chimp coming at me strong, I now know that if we lose people, it's because they think they are doing people a favour. Because this person, this voice on the shoulder is telling them they're no good, no one likes them, that's rubbish, that's rubbish, and the world would be a better place without you. So now that going through that was really tough. So then I spoke to my wife, spoke to the doctor, spoke to a counsellor on the phone, got some medication, which was obviously some people say medication isn't for them, but I think sertraline was a key factor in keeping me in this well. But on top of that, I started to then think I either go down or I go up. Now, not everyone has the inner strength to think like that, but I thought, well, I must do something about this myself. So I then started reading about what I was struggling with. Then I came across a wonderful book called The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters, who's helped people like Ronnie O'Sullivan and Stephen Gerrard. So having an understanding that that voice that was telling me things were going to happen wasn't my own inner voice. It was like a chimp coming to cause mayhem, helped me understand the, that there wasn't something wrong with me and I might be able to come back from this.
Wow.
So then I started to think, well, okay, then if it was self-employed, what should I do about that? Let's look for a job where you get your nights off, your weekends off, your holiday pay, and if you have a little bit of a bump before a holiday, it's not going to be the end of your world. So I was thinking it must have been that caused this downward spiral that I was on. So I was aged 46. So I started looking for jobs that I could do. Now I've done jobs before. I was a taxi driver, like a pub manager, but I've always, even as a taxi driver, I was like basically a counsellor, like listening to people's stories and not just interested in the money.
Yeah.
Was interested in their life, or if someone got in the taxi and spoke to me and had a chat with me, that was better for me than tipping me, because I enjoy talking to people and meeting people and helping if I can with some issues that they might have mentioned in the taxi. So I thought, right, let's have a look. So then I saw a job for a housing support worker, but it wasn't just housing, it was support around their life. Do you know what I mean? So I thought, well, I care for people, so I'm halfway there. I certainly have the empathy for the mental health, because I already had that in my life in abundance. But going through that when I had a perfect, lovely home, a nice, gorgeous family, friends, not a problem in my life. And for me to go through that, I thought, right, let's go into a field before it's too late where I can support people, but also help me with time off and holiday pay. So I was going for interviews and sending my CV off thinking I've been driving a taxi for all these years. They're going to be thinking, who's this man? So I turned up for this interview to be a housing support worker, and I just told my story in a passionate way and said, obviously I'm very basic on the computers, but I care for people. Give me a chance and I won't let you down. So, and after 2 interviews, I got the phone call, and I remember telling my wife, and she was crying, like, because I was going to. It was a really good, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be doing this. But then, so I got the job and I was really, really like thinking, like looking forward to it. But then on the morning when I was going to the job, I was thinking, I've never worked in an office in my life, and I'm 46-year-old, and what am I doing? What am I doing? Stepping out my comfort zone. But I knew I had to do it. Really, I knew I had to keep pushing forward for this to come back from whatever I was, wherever I was struggling and going to. So I walked in this office to be a housing support worker, and it was very daunting. There was about 17 people, and I'm a confident man, but I've never worked in an office before, and I was just missing the life I had. It was very daunting, yeah. And I was missing the life I had. I was missing just popping home when I wanted, being my own boss.
Yeah.
But I thought I must, you know, and with the support of my wife, like I was driving home on a night thinking, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? She's like, you'll be able to do it. You'll pick up. Or don't worry about that. And after a couple of weeks, I was getting my foot under the, you know, getting more and more into it, but still driving home thinking, what have I done? But then there was a little break in a little thing that gave me a little hint as to why the crash happened, and it got me moving even forward like quicker. So there was a man who was struggling with his finances, and he was going through a divorce, and he came in for some support, and I could see how much the letters he was getting on a daily basis for money, money, money was really, really affecting him. So me being the way that I am, and if I can solve and help someone straight away, you know, like instead of just saying, oh, well, we'll come up with a plan and come back in 3 weeks. So I said, let's go upstairs, and because he said he was due a financial package from the divorce. So I said, come upstairs, we'll have an hour now. I will call all of these people on your behalf with you sat there. I'll tell them all that you're going to do, you do some money. I'll tell them all how it's affecting your mental health. And bear in mind, I'd just come through anxiety with my mental health thing. So I was thinking, I know what it's like. So that I felt, you know what I mean? I already had the empathy for people, but I felt like, right, I'm ready for this. Let's make sure I support them. So I called them all up, put them. I got all the payments on hold for 3 months, and I said by that time you will have some money, because if you keep sending them letters, you won't be getting anything because you're not going to be here, right? So I've done all of that for him, and he was like crying, saying, "Yeah, thank you for that." And about a week later, and bear in mind, in this week I'm still driving home, so it was about a 17-mile drive. Thinking, what have I done? I'm out my comfort zone. Like imposter syndrome was kicking in.
Yeah.
I was thinking, you'll never get the hang of this. What on earth do you think you're doing? And anyway, about a week later, the fellow who I mentioned who was struggling with his finances and mental health, he practically skipped it. I was going out. I think I was going out for some milk or the paper on my dinner or something. And he was at the office door, and he started skipping and dancing. And he went, "You've saved my life." That was the words he said to me. The minute he opened his mouth, "You saved my life." And he shook my hand. He went, "I'll never, ever, ever forget what you've done for me." And because of he hadn't had letters for a week, he felt as if he could breathe. He felt as if yeah. So on that night, instead of driving to work for them weeks thinking, what am I doing? I'll never get the hang of this. Why have I left my comfort zone? I was driving home, and then I started to twist it around and think that happened for a reason. So
Yes.
that crash that I had, if I didn't have that, I would have just carried on being self-employed, and would have been too late to do anything like what I'm doing now, because I was getting on in years. You know what I mean? It was like I was 46-year-old. So I then started to think, I felt 10 foot tall. It was someone like giving me £100,000 in the bank to drive home on that night, knowing that he was having a better day than he was the day before. Do you know what I mean? So then I was like, watch me go. That was the little bit.
It's
That was
easy
the
start now, that's it. Watch me go.
yeah, watch me go. So that gave me the confidence. Not that I was lacking in confidence, but it was like imposter syndrome, or it was tough to get the thought of me changing my life around at that age, you know. But that gave me the kick on to. I was really moving then, so I thought, right, okay, then let's go to the next step. Let's look at counselling, you know, like a counselling course for myself, you know, so I can not to be a counsellor, but just to get my CV a little bit better and
Yeah.
learn more about why I went through the issues I did, and just to help other people in this line of work. So I done a level 2 and level 3 diploma in counselling,
Wow.
which was absolutely, I couldn't believe I'd been driving a taxi for years, and then changing my job around, and then going to college to be stripping myself bare and watching other people. Because bear in mind, I've had a good life and I hadn't really had any issues in my life until that point. But I was watching people, certainly on level 3, really realise like the issues they've been keeping within, or why siblings are where they are, or why the parents are where they are. But it was an honour to be on it. But I was also feeling proud to keep fighting back. And then so my CV then said housing support worker, level 2, level 3 diploma in counselling. Do you know what I mean? So then I thought, right, the job I got me on on that path of this kind of work, but it wasn't a great wage. So then I thought, right, let's apply for something else. So then I became an advocate for people in Sunderland, but that was like for people who lack capacity in care homes. So I was then in the midst of the coronavirus happened when I was working from these care homes. So I was supposedly trying my best to help patients in care homes, and the family then couldn't see them, and I was trying to speak to them through the window, to make sure that the people in the care homes were supporting them and give doing what their wishes say on the support plans and things like that. But then people were getting put in nursing homes from hospitals, and then they were passing away. So I was doing that. So I was right in the heart of the coronavirus, trying to support even the care home managers. Some of them had they were and the staff, they were like working 40 hours without a day off. Do you know what I mean? So it was really tough for them. But although I loved that job, it was I was missing the being able to support someone in their life before they were, they didn't have any capacity anymore, or they were in a care home. So then I don't know where I've seen it, or someone mentioned it to me, and they said you'd be an ideal social prescribing link worker. And like many people, when we say what we are, it's only like quite new, about 5-year-old in the country, so in the world. So I googled what one was, and it was like someone meant saying exactly how I am as a person. Do you know what I mean? So then I applied to be a social prescribing link worker, and that would be 3 years come December. And thankfully, I got it. I spoke openly and candidly about my issues and my passion for supporting other people. And I've been now a social prescribing link worker in Hartlepool for the last 3 years.
Wow.
And the first male social prescribing link worker. And I work with a load of lovely ladies, but I'm the first male in Hartlepool to do it. And basically, from the issue I had with the accident to driving home, being very emotional and wondering, thinking, is it better if I'm not here anymore? Because I was getting intrusive thoughts, and with the help of doctor, counselling, medication, the changing my life around to support other people. And then bear in mind as well, when I was in this kind of work, COVID then came, and without me even knowing it, I had an illness years ago called sarcoidosis. It was about 16 years ago. And I got a letter to say you're on the shielding list. So had I been self-employed,
Oh God, yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to work.
Mm.
So it was as if that little thought that I had on the holiday and the crash I had, I think now it was meant to be to get you away from what you were doing,
Yes.
to support other people before it was too late, and to also not be financially ruined when COVID came along. Do you know what I mean? So when we were working from home, although it was tough to support other people in my role, it was like every day I was thinking, oh my, I'm still going to get paid. So it was that was the that was the path that I went on, from that thought to that crash and it wasn't easy, but I just knew if I didn't, speak to the doctor and get medication and look to see what job I could do to support other people, which then, as a result of that, then helps me. So when I support people now, I've had empathy all my life, but to go through something when I've got everything going for me, can you imagine how much empathy I have for someone now who doesn't have any family or support, mechanism, and they don't, and I had everything and I still struggled. So I genuinely believe that happened to me to get me on this path before it was too late, to support other people and to help me recover from what can only be described as an horrendous time that I was going through. So that is, and where you find me today.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I've been filling up since the moment you spoke.
Oh,
And I have. And I'm normally quite professional about this. I have to say, I am. I think it's so brave of you, beyond brave of you, to speak out. It really is. It really is. It's so hard. And I know it shouldn't be harder for men to speak out than women. I know it shouldn't. And I am being
you're
genuinely
you're
sorry.
gonna
I'm
get
so
me
sorry.
crap.
I get a tissue.
You're gonna
I
get
do.
me.
And I won't edit this out because it's true.
It is.
It's this expectation that men have to be, and I think because we're both sort of similar generation, born in the
Yeah.
70s, You have to be a strong man. You can't show any weaknesses. You can't cry. Boys don't cry. All those songs that
Yeah,
we love growing up. The Cure, everything else.
yeah,
What's sad about that is that then you've obviously been holding all those thoughts and feelings for so long in your life that you think that you have to be the man, the father, and everything else. And that's lovely and that's great. But all of that leading to where you are now, and I've got a dish in my house, and if I can ever find another one, I'm going to post it to you and I'm going to send it to you. I think in fact, I might send you mine. And it says, it's only like, actually, I think it's a jewellery dish, so you might not want to, I don't know. But it says
I
on it,
probably
life
would.
begins where your comfort zone ends. And it's just, to me, that
Yeah,
just sums you up completely.
and that's exactly what it was, because nobody likes leaving the comfort zone, do they? Nobody likes going on a first date or going for an interview. Nobody does that. But I literally felt I am strong. I've had a wonderful life. I've got a wonderful family. I'm one of the lucky ones. So for me to have that issue that I went through, can you imagine now the empathy I have for people and the understanding of mental health and the wanting to support some other people and to not have anyone struggle like I did. And I'm very open on my social medias. I'm very open
Yeah,
to friends. I'm very open to, because the days of struggling with your mental health and keeping them within are over, and I'm helping towards that. And people like Tyson Fury are, people like Robbie Williams on his new documentary, they're all mentioning it's okay
it is. Yeah,
to not be okay. It's okay to say, look, I'm put your hand in the air if you're struggling, because I'm from a little place in Hartlepool called the Headland. And when we were growing up, there was a load of lads who took their own life. And it was only because probably the stigma of saying, I've got mental health issues, meant they kept it all within. And then the next minute, we haven't got them anymore. And what I said to you about the inner voice coming to say to me, you fell out with that person, that your job's rubbish, you're overweight, this, that, and the other. It was a chimp designed to make me feel bad at every. No,
yeah,
you're harder on yourself than anybody else, aren't you? Now,
absolutely.
the job that I do, if I spoke to people the way that my inner voice was then, and even to a certain extent now, we all have it.
Yeah.
You're lovely to other people, but to yourself, you're horrendous. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
this was just, this was like fight or flight times 100, and I didn't deserve it. I was drinking too much. I was struggling with it. I'll be honest, I didn't want to go to the doctors and say I was struggling. If I didn't, I don't think I'd be here. Do you know what I mean? Because that would have won. That chimp would have just got to a point where. So can you imagine, that was like an insight into people who may be suicidal, who may have them thoughts, and when they're gone, and then people think, well, why would they do that when he had a family? So can you imagine the final days and week leading up to that?
Yeah.
I've essentially had a window to that world, and it could have easily been me had I not went to the doctors, had I not got medication, had I not read the book, the Chin Paradox book, had I not had the confidence or the strength to change my life. Because not some people like me will have them thoughts, but they won't have the support network. They won't have a wife. They won't have friends. I had friends, family. Do you know what I mean? But some people will have
Yeah.
nobody, and
I
then
think,
them thoughts will just be within, and then we'll lose them.
yeah.
So if this video, I know people always say, if I say one person, but it's essentially, if one person watches this and thinks, do you know what? I've had intrusive thoughts. I feel embarrassed to go to the doctors. I'm a man. I don't want to speak up. Them days are over. I'm a man's man. I like me beer. I like me football. I'm a proper man. I've had a lovely life, and I was on the verge of taking my own life.
I think that's why you sharing your experience is so incredible, because before we started recording, we were talking about how in terms of the link between kind of post-separation abuse and what you are doing now,
Yeah,
is that, and obviously it isn't something you've experienced, but the irony is that link between the two is it is knowing that there is a life for you. There is a life. It doesn't have to all
no,
kind of,
it
and
doesn't.
that mental health sort of when you do spiral, where the blame, the shame, you think society is going to judge you for, and it's exactly the same with domestic
Yeah,
abuse. It's that
yeah,
shame and victim blaming. And actually, when you said before that you spoke to your GP, and you went and you got support and you asked for help, that is what you can't get across to people enough, is it? And it doesn't matter if it is around the mental health and domestic abuse, you have to ask for help because it's there. It is there.
It could be anyone. There's an image I saw the other week, and it was like carrying a bag with all of the weight. And when you start talking to friends or professionals, it's like you're unloading and you're getting rid of it all, and you're able to move forward. And it's literally the only way you come through something like that is first of all, know you've got a problem. Some people might be going through that and they aren't aware of it. They might think, well, it's just something I have to work through. I literally I was really in a bad place. I was really I was putting songs on in the back kitchen. I was drinking too much and I was getting too emotional. I was missing me, I did have my dad then, and I've since lost my mum, but I was thinking of my dad and I was crying, and it was just really, really, really difficult. But the main thing is, I always say, if you hurt your arm or your leg or you broke your leg and you were in front of a bunch of mates, they'd all jump down, wouldn't they, on the floor and say, "Oh, what's wrong? Are you all right?" But I don't know why, when the brain is the most mechanical, complicated thing probably on planet Earth, if that starts malfunctioning, why is it not okay to say, "Oh, I don't feel all right
Why
today"?
is it shameful to talk
I
about that?
know,
Yeah, and it
I
shouldn't
know,
be. It
and
shouldn't
and
be.
and, and I think one of the worst things for me, and one of the greatest things at the same time, was the worst thing was thinking there was something wrong with me, and the best thing was understanding when I have, went on a look. Obviously you can imagine all the training courses I've been on now and all of the things I've seen in the last 6 years since my issues, like the fact that pretty much everyone has got something that they're dealing with, and
Yes.
the more people, and I'm a big advocate of people like teach. I've been in my school as well, so another part of this last
Oh,
5 6 years, yeah, we got an email to the link workers to say, would anybody like to come into the school to talk about career progress? It was like a careers day or something like that. So within this, within this 5 6 year cycle that I've had, I was able to go to my old school and
wow.
talk to kids about the importance of your mental health. And at the end of it, a lad came with a little handwritten note and said, "You've really helped me today." Do you know what I mean? And I always go back to when I was really at my lowest and to think, I can't believe I'm stood here talking to people. And that was never a confident lad, but that was never something I'll never be great at public speaking. But I think when it's something like what I'm passionate around, and I think
That's
if I
great.
get one person, then it's worth it. So I come through that, despite me not loving public speaking, I come through that to get the point across. Do you know what I
But
mean? And
your authenticity and your real kind of self comes through in everything you say. You speak from
yeah,
your heart, and
yeah.
that is something that is an absolute gift. And if more people had that, the world would be a much better place if people
And,
could speak from the heart. And you
and
do,
the, th-
and that's it. That's a huge strength to you. I know a lot of what you've said is about the things you haven't liked about yourself, or you found you do. Unfortunately, it's like anything, isn't it? We focus on the negatives. One person can say,
yeah,
"Oh, you look great today." And then one person says, "Oh, 10 people can say you look great." One person
yeah,
can say to me, "Oh, don't like your hair like that." And I'll focus on that. I'll focus on the one
yeah.
bad bloody thing
And
that someone said.
I promise you, Lucy, that makes it even more difficult for what I went through, because I've never had that in my. I'm a confident lad, and even on my college course, one of the tutors said, one of the biggest things is we all care what people think about us. And I put my hand in the air and I said, I've had such a lovely life, and I'm such a confident lad that I don't think like that. I
Yeah.
think, what do I think about you, not what
Yeah,
you think about
yeah. I
me.
don't care what you think about me.
Yeah, and I've lived like that all my life, and that doesn't mean that's not in an arrogant way. That's just in
No,
a confident way, do you know. And
I
so
agree.
for me to be struck down with the mental health issue that I had, that's why the empathy's gone up by 1,000. Because I think, well, if someone like me who doesn't have, I can walk into a room of 100 people or in a pub in the middle of London on my own and start chatting to people. I don't have that. Even on me counselling, there was people being, they're realising things from childhood. But I've always been an open book and very confident in speaking my mind. You know what I mean? So that's what makes it very difficult for I went through, but very easy for me to
Yeah,
speak
I
now
was just
because
going to say that. I think that's
yeah,
a big part of it, and I think if more people care, if we cared less about what people thought, and unfortunately, and on so many of the episodes I've done, we talk so much about the impact on children. Social media,
yeah.
this perfect bloody complexion, this perfect figure, and everything, it doesn't exist. It's not real. It's all
I
photoshopped. It's
know
all a load of rubbish.
it
And
is, and I think social media. I would have absolutely hated to have had social media when I was growing up, because you would look. It's so damaging for mental health, because you're looking at images what aren't true, do you know, and then you're expected to look like that, and if you're not, then
and worry how many likes you get, and worry how many
yeah.
people are following you, and all those sort of things. And the sad thing is, if I'm hoping something like this episode and whoever watches it will see that actually, if you can learn to care less about what people think about
Exactly.
you have
I
more
know.
chance. Yeah.
I know I'm one of the lucky ones in that respect, because that's just something I was born with. I've had a good upbringing, I've had a lovely life, and I'm a confident fella. I literally care what people like. I care about people, but if I've done nothing wrong to someone, but they don't like me, I don't. That's on them.
You
I
know your
never
own
think
truth. You don't have to explain yourself. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's like, and then for that to come at me, I now use it as a tool, really, because to think like, for people to, now I'm talking to people, and I'd like to think I can empathise more than I ever would have. Certainly as a younger man, in my younger days, I wouldn't have been able to do the job I do now. So it had to be lived experience, and it had to be as I've got a bit so older in life, sort of thing. So I think it's fell into place perfectly, because I couldn't have done the job I do now as a younger man. 'Cause I didn't have them thoughts. I didn't know what mental health was. I didn't know, so much so I remember that, like, there was a footballer for Aston Villa, Stan Collymore, when I must have been in my 20s.
I remember the name. Yeah.
He come out and said he had depression, right? So he was a handsome man. He went on to play for Liverpool, but his manager at the time said, "What's he got to be depressed about? He's a good-looking man. He plays football." And I remember, as a 20-odd-year-old man, siding with the manager, thinking, "Well, why? What's he got to be depressed about?" Now it's only with educating myself and going through what I've been through, where you think, well, what does money got to do with everything? All the documentaries I've seen of late with Robbie Williams and Tyson Fury and Ricky Hatton, they can put their hands on millions of pounds, but it,
Doesn't mean anything.
it doesn't mean that they don't wake up one day feeling useless or worthless, or, do you know what I mean? So it's just, mental health doesn't it comes for everyone, regardless of,
Yeah.
it can come for everyone regardless of what you've got in the bank, and it's just,
Again, it's that kind of correlation between the two. One thing that I regularly say, again, around domestic abuse, is when people will say, "Well, you're out of the situation now. What's your problem?" They have
yeah,
no concept of
no,
post-separation abuse,
they
no
haven't.
concept that actually things could get worse. Things actually will probably get worse
Yeah, and
statistically.
and obviously, I've never been through domestic abuse, and it must be so really difficult for all concerned. But I would like to say, if take anything from that, is if you can, it doesn't have to whatever you're going through in your life in regards of a tough situation, it doesn't have to define you.
No.
You can come from it, and then another tool I always use. I always think, like, if I've been through that, nothing much can happen to me in life that's going to be harder than that. So you've always got that base to look back on and know that you come back from. So that gives you
Yeah.
resilience as well. I'm not saying everyone can do that, but I'm saying it doesn't have to define you.
No.
And also, it could be for a reason why you go through something like that. So then a couple of years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, you could be then supporting somebody else, because
Yeah.
you've got that lived
Using
experience,
that
and you,
gift. Absolutely.
yeah,
One thing that, when I talk to you, that makes me think is, one of my sayings is always, "What's your worst case scenario?" Now,
yeah,
everybody's worst case scenario is different. My husband will always go mad because I'll say, "What's your worst case scenario?" Well, yours was always going to be worse than mine, so you always win, because
yeah.
I will handle a lot, because at the end of the day, there's things that have happened that I've had to,
Yeah, so
live with and
it's like
move forward. Yeah.
you're using that as an experience to look back, and I think, well, remember when I was going through that? This is nothing compared to that, so I'm fine. You
So
know what I mean?
it's like your barometer, and it's like your measurement of saying, "Well, that was my worst case scenario. I lived through that. I survived to fight another day." And
Yeah,
that's the big thing,
exactly.
isn't it? When people talk again about kind of coping and recovery, what I find really difficult with that is, I think it's always there regardless, but I think it's something you learn to process, you learn to put it to good use, and you move
Yeah,
forward daily. You will have days where, I've worked with so many victims that they'll have the best of days, and then the next day something will happen and they'll feel like they've been dragged back.
yeah,
And
and I
we
think
just keep having to forge forward, don't you
and I
think?
think something to think about on that situation. As I sometimes, when I think of, well, always, I think, well, you're never going to be the person you were before that. It's you then have, it's like there's like a before and an after version of of yourself and the after version has been through that, and you're now hopefully through it with that resilience. But sometimes there's no point looking back and think, well, I wish I'd never went through. You have. They're the cards you've been dealt, and then you, if you can, use your resilience to then use it as a springboard to move forward, help yourself, but also in time with the professional help and support, you'll then be able to know what it's like and think of someone else going through that, supporting them. And then without you even knowing it at the time when you're going through something, you'll feel 10 foot tall, because not for any ego, but for the fact that you know what it's like. And there'll be people who hasn't been through that, so they couldn't support this person, but you can, because you've been through that.
You've been through
And
that.
then, and that's how your recovery continues.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you can, I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but if you can actually embrace the person you were and actually give them a high five and go, bloody hell, look at what you've come through and look how far you've come, and you're still here. You're
Exactly. You're still here. I say that to patients when I meet them, and I say, you've been through this, you've been through that. I hope you know how brave you are. And some people, when you say that they've never had that said to them, they didn't realise it until you say that. But don't be afraid to praise someone for, speaking up, because like I said, it's probably the hardest thing. Some people think, well, instead of speaking up, I'm just going to say nothing and hope it goes away.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when we lose people, and that's when there's so much. People don't realise there's support in every town and every city. In Hartlepool, that's only a small town, but there's hundreds of people volunteering for days and nights to make sure that people aren't on their own. But if you speak to a social prescriber at your doctor's, and every doctor has one, there's people there who can support you. So
they know where to, and that's the biggest thing I'm always saying, is they know where to signpost you to. Social prescribers, and I think actually so on my resources page on the You Don't Own Me website, I've got the social prescribers worker link on there. And every time I do a blog, and sometimes the blogs can be quite triggering for people and emotional. And so I will always say, go to my resources page, because there'll be something on there for everybody. And you're on there basically as a team, because I do, like I was lucky enough to know what social prescriber workers were.
Not everyone does. Not everyone does. We get called a carer, we get called a support worker. But if you literally think of the title, so we're prescribing things socially, but that doesn't always mean that's as easy as that. There might be factors preventing you. So we go and see people, and they think, well, I've got this going on, I've got that going on, I've got money issues, I've got mental health issues. And some people might never get to just go for a coffee with you or go and meet other people, but the ones who can, the ones who can, are able to, have a look at what we do and get and say yes to all of the things that we chat around and do, like a mini support plan. You wouldn't believe the amount of. There was a lady who I went to see her, and she didn't know. She said, "I don't know what you can do for me, son. I'm not seeing anyone. I'm not doing anything. I don't know what you can do for me." And I was. She wrote me a poem, and it was literally all the things that had gone in her life over the last few weeks/months. And it was like her finances were improved, so then she can go and see friends, she can go to the town more, she's going to a weekly autumn club with women her own age, she can go and see a friend because she gets more money.
She's not isolated.
And it was like, and because she was an intelligent lady in her brain, she was just essentially just thinking, well, there's nothing much left for me, I'm not doing anything, I'm not going anywhere. But then when I went to see her to close the referral, she'd done me a poem, and it was like, "Heroes drive Skodas." That's the car that I drive. That used to be the old taxi. And when she gave me the poem, I don't know why I thought of myself back struggling in the back kitchen on my own, struggling with me thoughts and the scared of the future, if you will. But I just sat and she gave me the poem, and it was so beautiful, and I'll cherish the poem forever, and I can share that with you. And I was just thinking of what I'd been through, and it was like full circle, if you will. And I was thinking about my mum and dad and how proud they would have been. I don't have them anymore.
Beyond words, proud of you.
Do you know what I mean? But this poem was so beautiful. But nothing about me. Like, obviously it was connections with the community and all the things I've signposted her to, but she'd done it all of herself, because she could have easily said, I don't want a social prescriber, I don't want to know what he's got to say, you can't help me, there's no point.
Yeah.
The next minute she's going here, there, she's going to an exercise group, she's going to a club on a Wednesday, and I took another woman to this same club a couple of weeks ago. I think it was last Wednesday, and there she was, who thought her life was pretty much coming to an end, in
Wow.
the middle of all of these other ladies playing bingo. I think she had half a beer. She was, and the smile on her face, and I went over and gave her a fist pump, and I said, I've still got the poem, but to just sit there, it was like watching your work come to life, isn't it? To think that I seen her at her lowest, and she
Priceless,
hadn't,
isn't it? That's
and then
priceless.
and there she was in the middle of this club with all of these other people, and then I just took someone else there, and yeah, so nothing.
You're doing so much good, so much good. And like you say,
Thank you.
if people could just know that where you were to where
Yeah,
you are, you need to write a book, by the way. I'm just telling you now. You need to.
I'm fighting a good fight, honestly. The amount of people who know what we are now in Hartlepool, and on LinkedIn, and now I share things on LinkedIn and Twitter and things, and things like that. But yeah, as long as people need to know that we exist, and we can't fix everything, but if we signpost, and if there's nothing there, we
Give
find it.
hope.
Or
You give
yeah,
hope. And that's, all I ever try and do with the website is just to give hope to people
yeah,
that all is not lost. That's what I always say. All is
yeah.
not lost and there is hope. And that's
There
precisely.
is, and I work with some lovely. It's like a personalised care team within. I've left in the. It's called a primary care network, and I was a supervisor in one of them, and I left there to go to another one. But all the team and the one I left behind, all the social prescribing link workers, the mental health nurses, the care coordinators are brilliant. And where I am now, we've got, it's like personalised care team. So you've got, like, years ago you would just think of doctors and nurses, but it's like people in behind the scenes. Like health and wellbeing coaches, mental health nurses, social prescribing link workers, care coordinators. They're all within the doctor's surgeries. You know what I mean? So people, please be aware and please ask the questions. And if you know anybody lonely or isolated who we can move their life forward, then speak to you, or Google it, or speak to your doctor's surgery, and that's what we do. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Oh, I can't thank you enough. This is the best way to finish the week for me on a Friday. This is
Well,
just like
I'm
the
glad we
best
connect.
way.
I'm glad we connected on LinkedIn, because, like I say, it's nothing about me. It's about getting that message out that you're not alone, and you're not. If you speak up, help will come, and with a bit of support from professionals, and you can move forward, and it doesn't have to define you, and you can, hopefully, as you get a little bit better, support other people with whatever they're going through, because who better, and keeps getting mentioned in this line of work now, lived experience. You know what I mean?
Yes,
There might be people put off from applying for jobs and that, because they think, well, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. Your lived experience with what you've been through, you'll know more than most people on how to help someone through domestic abuse with what you've been through, and you probably don't even realize that. So please,
experience
it,
is it's
yeah,
underrated,
it
and
is.
it's and it is, and what you're bringing is, but it is beyond priceless. It really is.
Well, I
And
really appreciate you letting me speak, Lucy, and
oh,
what you're doing is brilliant too. So thank you for
listen, we're going to bounce it. We're going to skip into the weekend.
that. Hopefully,
Oh, Alec, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. You've
my
given me
pleasure,
hope
Lucy.
there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look after yourself.